Imagine, just for a second, stepping into a world where divine wrath wasn't just some metaphor in a story, but a tangible, terrifying reality. A time when stepping across the wrong threshold could literally mean the end of your life in the blink of an eye. So what if ancient curses were actually real? Not magic, not just superstition, but a very real, deadly force just waiting in the shadows of a temple.
Picture the stark, cinematic reality of this for a moment. You're standing before these grand stone doors. Suddenly, a flock of birds flies overhead, dips just a little too low toward the gateway, and bam, they drop completely lifeless out of the sky. Animals brought too close to the entrance just instantly collapse. Any creature stepping through these temple doors met a sudden, inexplicable end. For the ancient people witnessing this, there's really only one logical conclusion, right? The gods were fiercely guarding these spaces, and their divine wrath was absolute.
Okay, let's dive into this. Today in this explainer, Geology of the Gods, Deciphering Ancient Curses, we're going to strip away the myth and look at the hard data behind some of history's most terrifying legends. As you'll see, these ancient mysteries aren't just spooky stories. They're actually fascinating intersections of human observation and extreme natural environments.
Section 1. The Deadly Ancient Curses, Tracing the Path of Divine Wrath.
When we look back at the historical record, we see a really distinct pattern. These terrifying death traps, they were not just isolated one-off incidents. Across totally different regions, ancient peoples reasonably believed specific locations were protected by supernatural forces. We see this at known cursed sites like the really infamous plutonium at Hierapolis, as well as various ancient tombs. The phenomenon was widespread enough that it cemented the idea of divine localized curses firmly into the human psyche.
Section 2. The Hierapolis Death Gates, the Ultimate Paradox.
The core of our most famous example is this seemingly impossible contradiction. At the Plutonian at Hierapolis, there was a massive discrepancy in who lived and who died. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer contrast. Birds and animals faced instant death just by getting near the gates. But the priests? They could walk right into that exact same cursed space, perform the rituals, and emerge completely unharmed. To the everyday observer, these surviving priests appeared to be ancient illusionists. I mean, it literally looked like they were wielding genuine divine favor and commanding the forces of life and death.
Section 3. Science unmasks the supernatural, revealing the invisible threats.
All right, it is time to pull the mask off the supernatural and reveal the physical reality underneath. The curse of Hierapolis wasn't a spell, it was geology. Hierapolis was essentially built sitting right on top of a geological exhaust pipe. The Earth's crust in that exact spot featured vents and fissures that resulted in the natural, continuous release of concentrated, poisonous carbon dioxide gas. And because carbon dioxide is heavier than air, it didn't just float away. Instead, it settled into this invisible, deadly lake of gas right at the temple's entrance. So the birds flying low or the animals walking on the ground were essentially submerged in this toxic layer and suffocated instantly.
So how in the world did the priests survive? Well, it was a brilliantly executed high-stakes magic trick, based entirely on acute environmental observation. Here is the step-by-step breakdown of how they basically beat the Plutonian. Step 1. They mapped the space and learned to find thin pockets of breathable oxygen that hovered just above the dense carbon dioxide. Step 2. When they absolutely had to dip into the danger zone, they just held their breath. And, probably hoped they didn't sneeze or trip. And finally, Step 3. By mastering the physical properties of this invisible threat, they could walk back out to the cheering crowds and emerge as divine survivors. It wasn't magic. It was a deep, highly practical understanding of their specific extreme environment.
But invisible gases aren't the only way the environment has tricked us into believing myths. Time and weather have actually created deep misunderstandings in our visual history too. Ghostly white marble? Yeah, it's completely a myth. When we think of ancient antiquity, we always picture these solemn, pristine, ghostly white statues. But the truth is, ancient sculptures were actually painted to be incredibly vibrant with bright colors. That stoic, pure white aesthetic we associate with the gods today is entirely an accident of time and nature.
And this brilliantly illustrates the vast geological timescales we have to consider when looking at history. It took 2,000 years. Think about that. 2 millennia of extreme pigment deterioration, wind, rain, and elemental exposure to completely strip away that vibrant ancient color. The physical passage of all that time fundamentally changed the data that modern humans were looking at, which resulted in an entirely fabricated mythology about ancient artistic tastes.
Section 4. Mythology as Early Science, Reframing the Ancient Mind.
This entire explainer really elevates how we should view the past. This isn't just about busting myths with some fun trivia facts. It's a profound paradigm shift about human intelligence. To quote the core idea here, mythology as early data interpretation of complex environmental events. So the crucial point is this: ancient people were absolutely not gullible. They were highly observant, early data analysts. They saw animals dropping dead instantly and formulated a theory, a divine curse, that perfectly fit the available evidence. They were making sense of extreme natural phenomena using the absolute best language and conceptual frameworks they had at the time.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought to take away today. If the terrifying ancient death gates of Hierapolis were literally just an invisible lake of carbon dioxide, and our pure white ancient world was just a 2,000-year case of paint fading away, well, it begs a fascinating question. What modern mysteries or magic in our own world are just waiting for a scientific translation? Next time you encounter something that seems completely inexplicable, remember the priests of the Plutonian and ask yourself what invisible forces might really be at play.